Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be focusing on a KPI and the method for calculating a KPI. Now, the KPI we're going to work on is going to be work order planning accuracy. And I'm going to show you how I created the calculated columns and the measure for setting up this KPI. And I'm going to talk you through the dashboard that I created here. Okay, so let's kick off by going through the definition of this KPI. So it's going to be called planned versus actual hours planning accuracy. And really what we're looking at here is the percentage of work orders which are within a defined planning accuracy. Okay, so on a work order you've got planned hours, and that are the hours that are made up during the scoping of the job. And then once the job is, while the job's being worked on, hours item booked to that job by the different crafts or different trades. And at the end of the job, when it's closed off, we've got the actual hours. And we want to assess how accurately we planned those hours versus the actual hours that are booked to the job. So it's really important to us from a maintenance point of view, and it feeds into two key processes and probably more. The first one is a scheduling process. So it's important that we've got accurately planned hours because we're going to put those into our schedule. And if we plan for 6 hours and it takes 80 hours, then that's going to bust our schedule. Likewise, if we plan for the 80 hours and it only takes 10 hours, then that's going to mean that we've potentially got additional work we could have put into our schedule, and we're going to be maybe scraping about to pull in additional jobs. And secondly, it's a budget process. So as we plan our jobs, particularly PMs, planned activities or preventive maintenance activities, but also corrective work orders, we'd like to be able to understand how much it's going to cost us to execute that work, and that's going to feed into the cost of maintenance and also the labour and contractor requirements that you're going to need. So it's a really important KPI to understand, because if we get it wrong, then we can be spending more money or we can be over budget or under budget. Okay, so that's the KPI definition. Now the next part here is all around how we're going to actually calculate it, the method we're going to use to calculate. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to only focus on closed work orders, because we want to only consider work orders that we know are complete. So we're going to select all a range of closed work orders, and that's going to be the date range we're going to use based on the actual finish date of the work. So that's going to be step number one, select a selection of work orders for a period to analyse the work order planning accuracy over. The second is for each of those work orders, we're going to calculate the absolute variance from the planned hours. Okay, so it's just as bad if we're overplanned as underplanned, so we want to understand what the absolute variance is. So all that does is if you've got the planned hours and you planned it for 10 and you only took 5, then the difference is going to be -5. We're going to get rid of the minus using that absolute, and or if it was 15, it would be the variance again would be 5. But in each instance, it's a 50% variance, 50% under, 50% over. But we're interested in that percentage difference. So that's the second thing we're going to do. And we're going to capture that information against each work order as a calculated column. Then we're going to calculate whether that value is within or out with the planning tolerance. Okay, so you might just have one planning tolerance for all of your work orders, but what I'm going to show you here is an option whereby you might want to set different tolerance levels in terms of the percentage over or under that you can be in comparison with the actual hours can be in comparison with the planned hours. But what I've done here is I'm going to talk you through setting up 5 levels. And you can play with these figures here once the template's in place. So if it's below 6 hours or equal to 6 hours, we're going to be able to accommodate 100% of a tolerance. Okay, so somebody could actually book 1 hour, probably 0 hours, really 100%, but 1 hour up to 12 hours, and it's still going to be within tolerance. If it's 12 hours, we've got a 75% tolerance. 24 hours is a 50% tolerance. Less than 100 or equal to 100 is 25%, so that's going to be 125 or 75. And then as we get over the 100, we want a 15% tolerance because the impact becomes greater. So we want the planning accuracy to be, or the tolerance for the planning accuracy to be tighter as the number of hours increase. Okay, this one here, maybe you want to make that one slightly, play about with these figures like I said before. But once the template's in place, you can use that. Okay, then finally what we're going to do is we're going to count the number of, so we've got our list of work orders in the period selected, so we've selected 100 work orders for example. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate the percentage of those work orders that are within tolerance. Okay, so percentage of work orders within planning accuracy is going to be the number of work orders that are meeting the planning accuracy. So based on the number of planned hours, if they're within a certain tolerance, they will meet that planning accuracy. So they'll get a flag that says, "Yep, I'm okay." And we're going to divide that by the total number of work orders in the period. Okay, 100 work orders. If 75 of them are within the planning accuracy tolerance, then it's going to be 75 divided by 100, 75%. Okay, so that's going to be the method we're going to use to calculate our work order planning accuracy. Okay, so we're back in Power BI, so we are ready to start creating our dashboard. So first of all, I want to just show you the data model. It's really straightforward. We've got a dates table with a one-to-many relationship based on the work order actual finish date and the date in the dates table. And that's going to help us ensure that we've got a consistent range of dates when we create a line graph that we're going to add to our dashboard. And we've got the work order or the closed work order table, so just a list of work orders that have been closed by actual finish date. And within here, we've got the actual labour hours and we've got the planned labour hours. Okay, so there are two vital fields here against each of the work orders. So if we go back into our dashboard here, I've added a table here just with a list of work orders, the description, the planned hours and the actual hours, just so we can start to see the calculated columns come together. So let's start off by creating a measure that's going to look at the planned versus actual hours variance. So I'm going to go and add a new column. I think I said measure, but it's a new column that I'm going to add here. I'm just going to paste this in just now. So start off, we've got the planned versus actual hours difference percentage. So we're basically going to create two variables. The first one's going to be the planned actual difference. So we're just going to take the planned hours minus the actual hours. And then we're going to calculate the difference, which is going to use this divide function here. In fact, I'll make it slightly bigger. Yep, and it's going to be the planned actual difference divided by the planned hours. Now to begin with, I'm just going to add in this planned actual difference because I just want to see that coming in here. And we'll add that into our table. Okay, so we can see these ones are all over planned, so the difference is actually a negative at this point in time. This one's pretty close, so we can see this one's over planned. There was no hours booked to it, so is this one here. So it was over planned by 5 hours. So as you can see, that's working fine. So then we can change it to the planned actual difference, which is going to be this percentage. Okay, and that's a percentage difference, so we need to change that to a percentage. So we've got that calculated column highlighted. We'll just test percentage here. And two decimal points, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this one's 8,700% over in terms of the actual hours, or under planned, basically, is what it's saying here. Okay, great, that's the first one. The next thing we need to do is we need to, like I mentioned before, we're not really too interested at this point in time as to whether it was over planned or under planned. We will put that information in the dashboard, but for the purposes of understanding the variance, we just want to get the absolute value. So to do that, we're going to create another calculated column. And all we're going to do is basically take the absolute value of the planned versus actual hours difference percentage. Okay, so the calculation that we just calculated, we're just going to take the absolute value of that. And all the absolute value does, if we go in here and look at this, is basically it returns the absolute, well, it doesn't really tell you too much here, but in practical terms, it just takes off the negative. Okay, so if we go and add that in, we should see that appear. Okay, perfect, and we need to change that to percentage. Okay, and we can see that that's the actual percentage difference. Right, great stuff. So the next thing we've got to do is we've got to add another calculated column to say, is this percentage difference within the tolerance that we've identified or we've specified for the number of planned hours? Okay, so let's go and add another new column. Okay, so here are the tolerance levels, and here's what I've done here. So the first one is we're going to store this as a variable because we use it quite a few times throughout this switch statement. So we'll store this absolute difference, percentage difference, that we calculated just previously as an actual variable. And then we're going to go and we've got this switch statement here and switch true. So basically what's going to happen is it's going to evaluate each one of these statements here, these AND statements in turn, and it's going to select the result for whichever one is true first. Okay, so it'll evaluate this one, and if it's true, it'll select this result here, which is 1. Now the 1 is a representation of it being within its tolerance, okay, or within limits. So if the planned labour hours are less than or equal to 6, then this planned, the absolute difference, this value here, this percentage difference between the planned hours and the actual hours, can be less than anything up to 100%, so less than or equal to 100%, and then it'll give us a 1 here that says it's within tolerance. Okay, so it can be up to 12 hours or up to 1 hour, and it's going to be within tolerance, so we're going to be okay with that. With 2, it's going to be within 75% of the 12 here, so it's within 3 hours up or down, sorry, within the 3 hours, 9 hours up or down. And then 24 is going to be 50%, so 12 hours up or down. And then it goes down to 100 hours, which is, or greater than 100 hours, which we want to be within 15%. Now, it might be that we're being a little bit too lenient here, but you can play with these values here and for your organisation and set them up as you need them. And you might only choose to have 2 or none or 1. It's up to yourself, but there's flexibility there. Okay, so if none of these are met, so if it doesn't meet this one, it means it's not within tolerance, and that's going to return a 0 here. Okay, so within the switch statement, you identify all of the different switch clauses. If none of them are met, then there's a final one which is defaults to blank, but in this instance here we're going to make it as 0. So we've got a 1 or a 0. 1 is within tolerance, 0 is not. Okay, so let's add this in. That's the one we've just created here. That's the calculate column we've just created here. And we can see that we've got some 1s and 0s and stuff, so that's great. Let's check out a few of them here. So this one here is within tolerance because if it was over 100 hours, it could be within 15% and it is there, so that's great. This one's within 50%, but it's less than 12 hours, so it's fine. This one here, yeah, that's not within tolerance because it's 50 hours and there was no hours booked to it. So we can see that seems to be working fine. And this one here, the planned labour hours, well, that's well over, so it's out with tolerance. So it's calculating dynamically based on the number of planned hours, whether it's within or out with the tolerance levels. So great stuff. Okay, so the next step is to create a measure that's going to calculate the percentage work order or percentage of work orders that meet the planning accuracy. So let's add a new measure, and I'm going to talk you through this one here. So again, we're going to create a couple of variables here and one to actually return the result. The first one is the work order selected. So we're going to look at all the work orders in the work order table. Okay, so all the work orders are currently selected. Then we're going to look at the work orders within the planning accuracy. Okay, within the tolerance. So that's going to calculate, again, it's going to fill, well, this is slightly different. It's going to calculate all of the work orders where the planned versus actual absolute difference within percentage within limits, bit of a mouthful there, is equal to 1. So that's going to basically take all the work orders that we've got, but then filter it down and only look at the ones that have got a 1 and are within that limits that we set, this 1 here. And then we're going to divide one by the other to get an overall percentage that are within limits. Let's go in here and create a card, add that value in here. So here it is there. Okay, so 71% of these work orders are within the planning accuracy tolerance, which, that's pretty good. Let's turn it into percentage so we can actually see it appear, and 71.5%. Okay, so we've got that headline figure now. Now the next thing I want to be able to do is I do want to know how much of the work orders were overplanned or how much of the work orders were underplanned as a percentage of this total here. So we're going to create a measure that's going to allow us to do that, okay? Okay, so let's add in a new measure. So these measures are going to be really similar, so I'll talk you through each one. I'll focus on this one to begin with. So an example here, if the planned hours are less than the actual hours. So we've got planned hours are 5, the actual hours are 10, so the difference is -5. So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to count the planned hours less than actual hours. Now we're only interested in the planned hours less than actual hours that were out with the tolerance levels. Okay, so when we do this, we're going to use a calculate statement. We're going to count the number of rows in the table, the closed work orders table, and because they're straightforward filters, we can use them just without using the filter statement. And the first one is going to be that the planned versus actual difference percentage is less than 0. Now this is the actual percentage, not the absolute percentage. So less than 0 means that it is a negative number essentially. So that's going to mean that the work was under planned. Actuals were higher than planned. And also it was outside the tolerance level here. So this tolerance level within limits is equal to 0. So we've already covered that. And then we're going to go and we're going to calculate that as a percentage of all of the work orders that were actually out with their tolerance level. Okay, so anything that was already planned and is fine, we're not going to be too fussed about it. What we're interested in saying, of the work orders that were out with the tolerance levels, how much were overplanned and how much were underplanned. So that is going to be the base here that we're going to calculate the percentage over. And then we're going to divide the first one by the second one to get that percentage. So let's pull that in here and change it into, okay, so the first thing we've got is we've got 70 here, and then let's turn that into a percentage. Okay, so it's rounded it up to 2 decimal places. So what we're saying here is 69.57% of the work orders were had the planned hours that were less than the actual hours. Okay, so we're under planned. So of the work, quite a few of them, you know, almost 70% of them were actually under planned. So let's check out the over planned ones. And it's exactly the same as the previous one, except we're looking at the work orders where the difference was greater than 0. So there's a positive difference. So that means the planned hours were 10 and the actual hours were 5. So these were over planned. So we've planned more hours than were actually booked to the work order. And I'm going to go and I'm going to change this to one of these ones here. This this card here, a multi-row card, and I'm going to change this to a percentage. Okay, so we're going to play with the formatting in a second. So we can see here that this both adds up to 100%, and that's 100% of the work orders which were out with the planning tolerance. Okay, so this next part, I'm just going to talk you through how I've configured this dashboard. So if you're happy just to go and configure it yourself, then great. If you want to see how I went about creating the dashboard that I showed you at the start of the video, then stick with this and I'll talk you through each of the steps. So the first thing I was thinking here was that we needed to put a little bit of conditional format in here. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to create another measure. New measure here. Now I've got a course on conditional formatting, so check out the description below. And it goes into conditional formatting in a lot more detail. But I'm just going to put a little bit of a little bit in here. I would probably put a bit more if I had time, but this is just going to give you a flavour for some of the kind of key conditional formatting that I would put in this dashboard. So I'm going to define a target here, and we'll call this PA target, and we're going to make that target 80%. Okay, and we're going to use that a few times in different situations. So that's going to be a target. Next, we're going to go, and I'm going to show you a little bit of conditional formatting here using a measure. So we're going to create another measure, and what I've done here, so use a switch statement, which is true. There is only really one argument here, which is if the percentage of work orders within planning accuracy, which is a measure we created before, and that's this percentage here, is less than or equal to the target, then it's going to be red. Okay, the target's 80%. Otherwise, it's going to return a blank. Okay, so this color here, red, I mean, we could put a hexadecimal number in here, but you can also just put a color and it'll recognize that as being a color, is going to be used to feed the conditional formatting value for this card here. So let's go into the card, and we're going to go to the callout value, this FX button here. We're going to go to field value, and then we're going to type in conditional formatting, and it's going to be this one here, planning accuracy versus target. Okay, so we can see it's red because it's 70%, so it's below the target. Now, if I were to change this target to 70%, 0.7, we can see it's gone black. Okay, it's gone back to its original. So let's leave it at 80% for just now because that's going to be our target. Okay, we're going to change this here. So I am going to turn off the category label, and I'm going to put on a title. I'm going to center that. Okay, so that's the first one. Now I'm also going to add a little bit of a border to this. And I'm going to add a shadow. And the shadow, I'm going to go to custom, and I'm going to make it slightly less of a blur there. Take it down to 5, and I'm going to take the distance down as well to 5. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do here. Next, I'm going to go and I'm going to format paint this onto here. So that's fine. And then we're going to go and switch back on this category label here. But I'm going to change the actual descriptions here because that's going to change the category labels. Percentage actual, planned greater than actual. And I'm going to add a title to this. Let's just make it slightly smaller. Okay, percentage over under planned. Percentage planned less than actual. In fact, actually I'm going to change that. Okay, so percentage over under planned, and then we've got 43%, 30% with over planned, and just under 70% were under planned. Okay, let's play a little bit about with the size of these callout values. So I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to make that 18. Maybe even better, 20. Let's make it there, and then we're going to do the same with this one here, the callout value. I'm going to make that one, say 34. Okay, so it really sort of takes up the space a bit more. Right, next we're going to go and add a line graph here. And it's going to be a line graph of the percentage of work orders within planning accuracy. So how are we doing over time? So let's go and add that in. I'm going to go and copy the format here to give us a starting point. The fonts will probably be too big, but we can change those in a second. So let's pull in this into the values, and let's pull in the date to give us an axis. And here we can see the trend over time. Percentage of work orders within planning accuracy by date. We'll leave that for just now, it's fine. And then we're going to go and add a trend line. So are we getting better or worse over time? So we're going to go in here and we're going to switch the trend line on. And we can see that this trend has been added, and we're going to change that color to make it slightly, we'll maybe make it this color here. Okay, that's fine. So we've got a trend over time, so a slight downward trend over time. The other thing I want to do is I want to put the target in. We know the target's 80, but what I'm going to do is add in another line here, a y-axis constant line, and we're going to call that target value. And we're going to put that as being, I think it needs to be this. Yeah, here we go. Okay, and then and here I'm going to add in the data label, and we're going to put the data label, where is it? There. We're going to use both, and it hasn't accepted this change here. Hold on a second. Okay, so that's it now. Target is 80. It's a little bit squeezed there, but we can see that's in there for the target, and here's the trend. So that's our trend over time. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to go and show two things. I want to be able to show from a work type point of view. So what type of work is maybe being better planned than other work, because we'd expect maybe preventative maintenance to be better planned because it's more predictable. And we also want to see is there any departments that are better at planning than other departments. So let's remove this for just now. And we're going to go and add in a column chart. I think that's probably going to be the best one to add in here. And in here, the axis is going to be we'll start with a work type, and it is here. And the value is going to be the planning accuracy. Okay, so we can see here that these PMs are clearly better in terms of planning accuracy than the other ones, so that's good. Let's add a target line in here as well. So can we add a line in here, a constant line? Yep, okay, we'll add in that constant line here. And we'll call that target. And it's going to be 0.8 again. Okay, so we can see the target. So none of them are actually above the target, but this one's certainly closer to the target than the other ones. Let's copy that. In fact, actually, before we do, let's format paint this so we've got a similar sort of format there. And let's copy that. And then in here, we're going to use the same approach here, but it's going to be by department. So let's go in and add in our department in as the axis and take off this. And here we can see operations, pretty good, maintenance, reasonable, integrity and wells. In fact, actually, let's do it by discipline. Okay, there's a little bit more there for the discipline side of things. And we'll probably want to put in, for this one here and for the other one, I would say, let's add in the data labels. Probably want to make the values 0 decimals. We just want a ballpark figure. And we'll do the same with this one here. Now, these guys are above and pretty close. Instrumentation is pretty close. Services and operations pretty good at planning, etc. And of course the cross filters are on here, so you can actually filter and look at who's better at planning PMs, etc, etc. Okay, so we've got a bit of space here, and I'm going to add in a final visual, which is going to be the top 10 work orders based on the largest absolute difference between planned versus actual hours. So I'm going to just go and add a new table. And I'm going to add in, first of all, the work order number. And then I'm going to add in the description. I'm going to add in the actual or the planned hours, first of all. And then I'm going to add in the actual hours. I think it's just useful to see those as a reference. And then we're going to add in the percentage difference. Now I'm not going to add the absolute difference because I do want to see in this top 10 if they're over or under planned. So it's going to be the actual percentage difference. Let's just configure this here. So first thing is, let's use the format painter. And let's just take most of what we can from here. So we've got the shadows, etc. We'll add a title. Top 10 work orders by percentage difference. And of course we've got to actually filter this to show the top 10 work orders. So let's go to our work order number. And you do need to make sure that this work order number here, I noticed this, if you go back to this field well here, this work order number, it does need to be set to don't summarize, okay? Because otherwise if it's a number, it's going to ask you for the numeric values when you filter it, which are like less than or equal to or greater than or whatever. Okay, so just make sure you do that. So let's go into our work order number again. Where is it? Where is it? Here. And now you've got this different options here. And we're going to go to advanced, top N, top 10, and it's going to be by the planned versus actual difference. There we go, absolute difference. I'm going to apply this filter. Okay, so we've only got 10 in here now. So let's go and change some of these descriptions here just to make it a little bit easier, and we'll format the table. Okay, so we've changed the titles here and we'll just make them slightly smaller. So we'll go to values, make it 9, and then we'll go to column header, we'll make that 9. It should be possible, hopefully, to fit this all into one. We don't want people to be scrolling from left to right, if we can help it. Yeah, we've got plenty of space here. Okay, so perfect. Oh, and we need to get rid of the subtotals underneath here, or the totals. So let's go into totals and switch those off. So that is fitting just in no more than here, which is, we've got this little scroll bar here, so we might need to just, let's go to values and let's see if we can put in, can you do 8.5? There we go, 8.5. Perfect. Okay, so we can see we've now got our top 10 work orders, and you could add in extra stuff like drill throughs and other bits of conditional format, but this is give us a good overview of our performance in relation to our planned versus actual planning on work orders. So you can see here we've got the overall figure here, which is in red. In fact, I just want to add one last thing in here. I want to add the category label, and I'm going to go and change this category label to be a description of target. I'm going to put target less than 80%. Okay, so we can see that target. Then of the work orders which are out with the planning tolerance, so are not planned as accurately as we'd want them to be, we can see that 30% are over planned, so we put more planned than actual hours, and almost 70% are under planned. So we've put not enough planned hours onto the work orders. Then we can see there's a target here. We are meeting the target in some areas and sometimes, but we can see the overall trend is getting worse over time, which is not good. Then we can see which work types are best at planning, PMs, which you would expect because they're kind of set pieces. They're repetitive work to go and check, carry out checks or carry out sort of replacements. And then we can see that operations services are the star players when it comes to planning. And here's our top 10 in terms of the difference between the planned and the actual hours. So we can start to investigate some of these that are really kind of quite heavily over or under planned. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you found this useful. If you have, then it's always appreciated if you could give the video a thumbs up. And if you're watching this for the first time and want to keep up to date with the latest videos, then press the subscribe button and click the little bell to get a notification whenever I release a video, which is about every week. Okay, thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.